What are my options? Learning the rules of golf. This is lesson 3. In this lesson, you will learn about the term known or virtually certain, your gateway to water hazard relief. This term incorporates two distinct parts. In the simplest case, you hit a ball towards a water hazard and either you or someone else sees the ball go in, or you find your ball in the hazard. In both cases, you know or it's known that your ball is in the water hazard and you can use the water hazard rule. However, when you use this rule, you must also add a penalty stroke to your score. We'll see that in lesson 4. So sometimes you might decide the best option is to play the ball as it lies. When you do not know your ball is in a water hazard, you must be virtually certain and you must use all available evidence to determine where your ball might be. In order to use the water hazard rule, you must be virtually certain that the ball you cannot find lies in the water hazard. Virtual certainty is a level of confidence. If you're confident enough, you're virtually certain that your ball's in a water hazard, you can pass through the gateway. We referred to the gateway at the beginning. This is what it relates to. If you're not virtually certain, you cannot pass through this gateway. You can think of this certainty as being nearly 100% certain that your ball lies in the water hazard. We only deal with this when we can't find our ball. When we can't find our ball, we need to try to figure out where it might be. When you don't know and you're not virtually certain, you cannot use the water hazard rule. When you do know or you are virtually certain, you can use the water hazard rule. Now let's look at some examples so we'll try to figure out exactly what this means. To establish virtual certainty, again, you need to take into account all the evidence. There are some hazards where establishing virtual certainty is actually pretty easy. This is the 17th hole at TPC Sawgrass. There's the green, there's short fringe cut around it, there's a small bunker at the front of the green. If you don't find your area or your ball in any of these areas, it's virtually certain that your ball's in the water hazard because there's no place else your ball could be lost except the water hazard. Here's the 11th at Augusta National. If your ball is headed left and you don't find it in this shortcut grass or the fairway or the green, it's virtually certain that your ball is lost or not found in this water hazard. Therefore, you would have virtual certainty. And then this is Emerald Valley Golf and Resort down in Cresswell, Oregon. This is the 14th hole, and there's a lateral water hazard left of the tee. If you don't find your ball in this, which is essentially fairway and short rough, it's virtually certain that your ball is not found or lost within the hazard of the margin, and you would have virtual certainty and you could use the water hazard rule. Contrast that with all of these examples. This is where it's much more difficult to establish virtual certainty. In all of these cases, we're going to say we don't know our ball is in the water hazard, which means we didn't actually have somebody see it go in, we didn't see it go in, or we don't find our ball in the hazard. This is Bethpage Black, site of the US Open a few years back. This area here, a lot of tall grass, is outside of the margin of the hazard. There's also some trees outside the margin of the hazard, and in general, there's just a lot of areas where your ball could not be found outside of the margin. If that's the case, it makes it very difficult to establish virtual certainty because there's a lot of other places where your ball might be hiding. This is the Oregon Golf Club. If I was to hit a ball off the tee and I pull it a little bit left, once it gets behind this tree, I can't see it anymore. Well, when I walk down there, there is a small lateral water hazard just left. There's also some tall grass just past that hazard, and there's similar tall grass actually to the left of here, short of the hazard. So without having a witness that actually saw that go in or finding my ball in the hazard, it makes it not impossible but very difficult to establish virtual certainty. These are all examples of where it's just more difficult to pass through that gateway. My ball could just as easily be lost in this lateral water hazard as it could be in the tall grass outside the hazard. This is the 4th hole at the OGA golf course. If I was to hit a ball and it bounced off this tree stand, so rattled around in the trees, there's a water hazard here. It's a lateral hazard that wraps up around the left side of the hole. If my ball hit and I couldn't tell where it went, it could just as easily be lost up in the trees, somewhere here within the trees outside of the hazard, or lost in the hazard. This is a situation where, again, it would be difficult to pass through that gateway because I can't be virtually certain in most cases that my ball is actually inside of the margin of the hazard. Another example, this is number 5, the next hole at the OGA golf course. If I was to hit a ball over this green, so straight over the green, I would see that this area precedes, so this is just past the green, precedes a cart path and then a lateral water hazard behind. This is looking directly at this grass. It's very long, it's really scraggly, and in general it's easy to have difficulty finding a golf ball. If I hit it over this green, it's going to be difficult for me to establish virtual certainty unless I'm certain that I hit it far enough that I would not be lost or not found in this area. So if I hit a shot that went way over the green and I knew it was in the hazard, well, I'm virtually certain. If I hit a ball that may have ended up here, it's going to be a lot more difficult to establish virtual certainty and thus be able to use the water hazard rule. And our last example, this is the 18th hole at the OGA golf course. If I hit my ball left again over these bunkers, once I get over those bunkers, I see that there's out of bounds, and that actually runs up the whole left side of the hole. And then there's a lateral water hazard that runs up the right side, actually the left side of the hole, but the right side in this picture. So we have out of bounds all the way down the left, and we have a lateral water hazard that runs up the remainder of the left side of the hole. If I don't know that my ball finished right or entered right of this stake into the lateral water hazard, it could just as easily have entered left of this stake. In this situation, it would be very difficult to establish virtual certainty. How can you be sure that your ball was right of this stake if there wasn't anybody there or you didn't find a ball to be able to be sure of that? Well, the answer is it's very difficult. Most likely here you're going to be playing under stroke and distance, and the water hazard rule would not be an option. If you don't find your ball after hitting it toward a water hazard, this is a really good question you can ask yourself. You might ask your fellow competitors, and in fact, rules officials or referees will often ask you this exact same question. Is it possible the ball is lost somewhere else outside of the water hazard? Okay, is it possible it's lost somewhere else? If the answer to this question is no, it is very likely you're going to be virtually certain and you can use the water hazard rule for relief. We already looked at the 17th hole TPC Sawgrass. If someone was to ask you, is it possible your ball is lost outside of the water hazard? You hit it in the direction of this green, it's not on the green, it's not on the fringe, it's not in the bunker. Your answer is most likely going to be no, it's in the water hazard, and therefore you would be able to use the water hazard rule. This is just kind of a test you can ask yourself to make sure that you're operating correctly under the rules. In this case, the answer would probably be yes. I hit a ball in the direction of this hazard. I'm not quite sure if it made it to the water. I'm not quite sure if it was a little bit short. If I answered yes, it's possible my ball could be lost in this tall grass. Maybe I hit it towards this tree and I'm not quite sure where it bounced. Yes, it could be stuck up in this tree. Maybe it was bounced to the right and it's somewhere over in the rough to the right of the hole. In all of these cases, you can't use the water hazard rule for relief. You must assume that your ball is outside of the water hazard and your only option is to play again under penalty of stroke and distance. One last note. If you don't know your ball's in a water hazard, playing with a group of friends or 3 complete strangers doesn't change anything about your ability to use the water hazard rule. Virtual certainty, or your level of confidence of where your ball that has not been found is hiding, is set by the rules of golf. It's not set by 3 friends that are just allowing you to drop under the water hazard rule because they don't want to have to see you walk back to the tee. If your fellow competitors just trying to be nice allow you to drop when the available evidence suggests that your ball is lost in tall grass short of the hazard rather than in the water hazard, there's a good chance that if you use the water hazard rule and the committee finds out, you're going to be disqualified from that competition. Similarly, if you have 3 people that don't believe that there's virtual certainty, that doesn't necessarily mean that you don't have it. Maybe they don't understand this rule quite as well as you do. So if you have virtual certainty, you understand the concepts in this lesson, you're welcome to use the water hazard rule for relief. Okay, that's it for Lesson 3. Now's a good time to take the quiz. If you're watching on YouTube, the Oregon Golf Association website is linked in the info below. And if you're already on the OGA website, the quiz is immediately below this video. Thank you for your interest in the rules of golf, and good luck on the quiz.